Hey, it's Chris. Liege Games, crowdfunding roundup. So why is a box sitting in front of me for the crowdfunding roundup? Well, cold open here. This is what you need to know, right? I got a DHL shipping notification like 2 weeks ago, and I was like, oh man, what am I getting from overseas, right? Like sometimes I get a few things from publishers as a surprise. Sometimes they send me stuff and sometimes I don't know about it. Sometimes it's, whatever, right? And so I get it and I'm just waiting. And then all of a sudden it shows up, but then I miss it because it's DHL, right? You know that whole story, but I get it. And I come home and I'm waiting for it. I'm looking for it. And my wife's like, oh no, it's that small package on the counter. And I'm like, what? And it's this big. And I'm going, oh, okay, that's kind of weird. Okay, so I open it up and, it's got this box in it and, it's got this nice, cool little picture on the outside, just this nice little graphic. And then I open it up and even better, it's got little straw in it. And I take it out and I go, look at this cool insert. Look at that picture. What does that look like? Oh, that looks like, that's Enzo from Assassin's Creed, right? Oh, that looks awesome. What am I getting from this? Why am I getting this? And then I pull this out and I go, what's this? Oh my gosh. It says CMON and Ubisoft on it. Oh man, am I actually getting some notification from CMON? That's freaking awesome. And then I turn it over and it's got a QR code and I'm like, oh, it's a Join the Brotherhood. Awesome. And then it says, okay, it's the Brotherhood, and you click on it and it goes, Assassin's Creed, if you didn't catch that on the other side, role-playing game. Let's do this. So it was clearly one of those situations, right, where my hopes were just raised sky high and then immediately crashed down to nothingness. Because, role-playing game? I understand, but CMON? Okay, and then to me, what? Because the QR code just links you to the preamble page that gives you no information whatsoever either. So take that for what you will. Crowdfunding roundup though, that's why you're here. Let's do this. First up this week, I told you it was coming. I told you it was out there. I hyped it last weekend. I hyped it in my video. I freaking love Exceed, and Guilty Gear is the latest season expansion content for it from Level 99 Games. Level 99 Games is coming back to crowdfunding with this. We haven't seen them on there for a while, but they're giving you everything that you need to know all on the page in the first place. You actually have the ability to get some of the previous stuff as well with some of the other exclusives that they offered in the prior Under Night Siege campaign. I always mess that name up. But they're offering, I believe it's the playmats and the acrylic standees, because they were not offered outside of the pre-order last time. And that was not on crowdfunding. That was actually at retail. Guilty Gear, they're offering you a new iteration of Exceed with a new mechanic, because each season has a slightly different mechanic, but the nice thing is that they're all compatible, so you can have these characters that are vastly asymmetrically different. Pick and choose what mechanic you prefer, pick and choose what character you prefer, pick and choose what overall style you like: attacking, defending, maneuvering, quick, long range, melee, whatever you want, right? You're getting 20 new characters here in a heaven or hell situation. It takes 15 minutes to play, 30 life, knock your opponent down. They've got a better playmat here set up than the previous. Everything you need to know on the page is there. The rulebook is not always the most clear, but there's enough examples out there nowadays that there's no real issue once you actually get into it. And so it's one of those, it reminds me of button shy games, right? Like it's down to a bare minimum. And so some of the edge cases sometimes aren't as explained thoroughly as you would like, but at the same time, there's not a whole lot of interpretation usually needed. So what are you getting right here? You're getting $100 of everything, and that's probably the biggest issue, is some of the level 99 stuff. If you're not a Deluxified fan, if you're not a fan of the acrylic standees, you can probably get it later at a mass market online game store for less. And so I have no qualms about telling you that. I have gone both ways with them. I have done crowdfunding. I have everything pretty much, except for a few promos, of Millennium Blades. Got it all on crowdfunding, right? I've gotten most of my Exceed from retail, a combination of their store and a combination of online stores. And so you do what you feel is appropriate. Now, they offer some of the extra stuff, obviously, through their own personal website as well as the crowdfunding, but you're going to be getting a ton of stuff. And that's really the question, is if you have the other seasons or a season of Exceed, do you really need this? No. A lot of these seasons are specifically tailored to, do you love this tie-in? Do you love these characters? Do you love this IP, whatever one it is, right? Or do you love some of the other ones with the uniqueness of the mechanic as a whole? Now, this mechanic in this game is you have a chance to play cards. Chance is actually the name of the mechanic. It's cancel. Sorry, it's cancel, which essentially actually what happens is you get an extra turn, because in this card-based 1 versus 1 dueler, as you go up and down this lane in the middle, you have one action on your turn. You play one card in some various manner, and the cards are multi-use. So you've got 3 or 4 potential ways of using a card on your turn, and your deck is also your limiting factor, because if you go through your deck twice or you have to shuffle a second time, you lose. Otherwise, it's just a knock 'em out. I prefer this one over Yomi and Battlecom because there's less perfect information, because of the asymmetry, and because it's more beginner friendly. Standees, you know me, I'm team standee all the way. The playmat, actually, if they've incorporated the above changes right here that allow you to put out the areas in which they describe, because sometimes there is a little bit of confusion about what's going to what when you just don't have anything in front of you with this game, of what's discard, what's gauge, what, you know, what's your draw deck, you know, all those things. I like the format in which this is set up, even with the paper one that I had in the demo deck. So it's much better than the previous ones already. Here's the Under Night in Birth. I don't know why I thought it was Siege. Under Night in Birth versions as well. And I'd be completely transparent here. This is the one that I know nothing about. I know very little about that season. I have their other one. I think I have seasons 2 and 4. And so, I mean, I have plenty right here. I have Blaze Blue. And so that's the other one that I have. But do you want this? I mean, I have no qualms about telling you, yeah, I would agree with Mike from One Stop Co-op Shop. Maybe Summoner Wars 2nd edition, but that's a whole different, like that's faction team based. The 1 versus 1s, this is hands down my favorite, and my video is right there. It's just fantastic. So the question is going to be, if you want to get it, are you really willing to pay for the extras here? The extras, with the $179 being the playmat, the acrylic standees, as well as extra metal coins. You can do two games simultaneously, which is unnecessary. But here you go, you get the $99, and that's the question. That's probably the slight make it or break. With the shipping, it's probably going to be slightly more than retail with these prices. But that's the price you're willing to pay. Do you need everything? No, you don't need everything exceed. You know, if you love this game as much as I do, you don't even need everything. Like, I don't have everything. I would love everything, but I know my own limits as well. But ultimately, this is a fantastic game. I cannot say enough. This is probably my top 15 or 20 games easily of all time, if not higher. But it's got an audience. Its pedigree stands out, and that's why it's got almost $200,000. Can I just shout out here for a second at the end of this that they went with a true funding goal of $150,000. None of this fake stuff that, you know, there was a little bit of a blurred out thing. I just didn't say it there. Didn't actually bleep it out, but I wanted to because, you know, family friendly channel. But I love that. I give them kudos. I hate seeing the fake stuff. So there you go. The other one I covered. Oh, Peacemakers right here. Peacemakers Horrors of War. But, whoa, that's right, folks. It's actually not at the top of the page because it's not featured, because it didn't break, you know, 6 figures in the first 24 hours. So you get to see instead some of these not only upcomings, pledge managers, and just stuff that might be out there in the future. But that's it. I hate this. GameFound, still on a week-by-week basis, not marketing the ones that are actively bringing in money just because they're not bringing in as much. Come on. Now, this was a late acquire by me. Sammy, I reached out to the designer after I read this description like a month ago, and I said, hey, would you mind, do you have a prototype floating around? Because this is right up my ilk. Now, this is going to be sort of a Spirit Island in a slightly different manner. And I say that just because what you have going on here is you've got these 6 scenarios that are going to be variable levels of difficulties with asymmetric starting conditions, essentially, if you will, and you are playing the game of mediators trying to stop the war, and you've got one side just continually going at the other side in this animal-based faction game. And I'm going to argue that this is probably going to be potentially a sleeper hit, a significant dark horse of the year on crowdfunding, but also when people get it. This game is fantastic, and I believe I'm not the only one, because if you don't like me, if you don't believe me, go check out Space Biff. He was actually one of the people that had this before as well, and I believe his review is quite glowing in addition. And so that's what you need to know, right? There you go, right there. I didn't even realize this quote was at the top. This is just something completely different. It's card hand management in a slightly different way, and that's where the Spirit Island comparison comes in. You've got these 7 different animal factions that are going to be going up head to head. You may have 2, you may have 3, you may have more than that potentially. I don't know, because the prototype that I have only had 2 scenarios in it, which again were completely different in terms of the layout as well as the mechanisms that the cards were using, because your cards have an order system essentially. You've got 2 cards per faction, and one tells them what they're exactly doing and the other says how they're doing it. And that's these cards at the bottom here that you flip over on a round by round basis, but you're only going to have a limited amount of cards in your hand that you're drawing from a random deck. And that's going to be part of the issue, is that you just might not get the cards that you want from a random deck as what are considered your resources in order to do the actions. And you are trying to prevent war. And if you do not prevent casualties, yes, casualties may help you because you're trying to get the initiative track down into this green area, if you can see it on each of these maps. And when you get it both in the green area, that's when you win. But if you lose troops on either side, it's going to help you get the initiative down, right? The motivation for those people to keep on fighting is less, but you're going to have PTSD essentially in the form of a card get thrown into your resource deck, which is going to detrimentally prevent you from, or trying to prevent you from achieving your goal in the first place. The meeples are awesome, and you're going to get a free promo pack as well. Lands of Galzier, again, cheaper on crowdfunding. Snowdale Design has been very clear about that. And to be frank, this is actually a little bit cheaper than I was expecting. Now, I don't know, 6 scenarios, is that enough? Is that not enough? Again, like I mentioned, 3 levels of difficulty in each scenario. What is the promo pack going to entail? Those are the sort of questions you have to ask yourself. But again, Snowdale Design, just like Lands of Galzier, does not come to wide retail availability or market, just like Dale of Merchants. Like, I own the majority of Dale of Merchants as well. And this is the thing I will say about Snowdale Design. If you're looking for something completely different that is not like anything else out there, whether it's this, Lands of Galzier, or Dale of Merchants, this is what you're looking for. This is going to fill a hole in your collection. Now, again, though, it's not going to be for everybody because this is a very, very tactically heavy game. And this is a longer based game just based on the scenarios. It doesn't seem that long, but to be very frank, there is a lot of minutia maneuvering back and forth, timing things right, guessing wrong, spying at the cards, trying to understand what the faction is going to do so you can mitigate it. And it also, it scales to 4 people. You're only going to get 4 cards back at the end of every round as more resources. So if you have 2 people, you only get 4 cards. If you have 4 people, you only get 4 cards. So how do you want to divide those cards up? Because your characters on the map, your mitigators right here, have to be next to the factions that you want to mitigate. And so who gets those cards is really going to make a dramatic difference. It's a great game, though. It's a fantastic game. And so if you have any interest in this whatsoever, you need to check this out. And go check out someone else's video if you didn't check out mine. Check out the rule book. I mean, this is fantastic. There it is. I mean, it just is. I stand by this, and I'm glad he put a quote on there from me because it really did. And I stand by that. And you can, laugh at me or hype me up in the comment section, but I don't say this about every game, right? So when I say it, I means it. So there you go. It's just a fantastic game. I love what they've done with it. It's going to be on a lot of people's lists if it gets some recognition, because that's the other thing. I think a lot of people are over going to look this. I think just, because he doesn't do wide distribution, because he doesn't do a lot of like preview, review, even when it comes out to, wide distribution, people are going to overlook this, but don't be fooled. This one is going to be well worth your money if this is your ilk. If it's not going to change your mind, because again, this is going to be like Spirit Island length scenarios. So, this or that. Now they're different, but there's some overlap. So check it out if you're interested. So next up, we got Dungeon Kart from Brotherwise Games. I believe this is the one that actually came out originally as sort of an April Fool's joke, but then they made a full game into it. So Brotherwise has really incorporated sort of a Mario Kart Heat pedal to the metal incorporation when what we got going on here. And so what you need to know about this in the world of Boss Monster is you're going to be doing Mario Kart a la racing around a hex-based grid of variable length terrain and spell usage in your asymmetric boss in the first place. And so what you've got going on a turn-by-turn basis is you're going to be allocating a certain number of movement points to your move actions as you go through this hex-based grid. And the number of pips in the center of each of those hex-based situations is the number of movement points that it takes. But if you're in a different terrain as well, it will add additional points. If you do not use all of your points, you will actually spin out. And if you cannot actually achieve the next space because you don't have enough pips, you can actually just cheat and kind of go to the next space anyway, but it doesn't allow you to do anything else. You can drift, you can turn, you can brake, it says as well, but it's really weird because the rulebook actually says, here's the brake explanation. It's not actually on the player board because you're not actually going to do it a whole lot, which makes sense, but then also it says it could save you from a timely, crash as well. So weird dichotomy there. But what you've got going on essentially is you're going to have stuff on the map itself, including coins, including spells, and you're going to be picking up as you go, as you pass through these locations. And depending on what place you're in at the end of the round, it's going to depend on what spell card potentially you're going to be drawing from. And then the interesting part is, if I'm reading the rulebook correctly, is that there's no requirement for the spell card itself in terms of cost, right? It's just you get to play it. And this is very heavily take that based. So how do you feel about that? Because the main thing that you're going to be otherwise doing is collecting those coins, because each of your boss character drivers, if you will, your Mario Kart, Luigi's, Mario's, Peach's, Toad's, princesses, Bowser's, are going to have asymmetric abilities. Now they're going to have 2 asymmetric abilities, again, which are playable once per round, at the cost of those coins that I just mentioned that you pick up by traversing over them on the map in the first place. One is going to cost 2, one is going to cost 3, and you can kind of just play them whenever they say during those rounds. So yeah, that's the game in a nutshell. Now, the interesting thing here is they've got 3 different price levels. $50 gets you sort of the base game essentials, if you will, with the little acrylic standees. And that's probably the biggest price point issue with all of this, right? Is that they are doing acrylic standees to go along with it. And then you go up and you get this extra void tiles, you get an extra racer, and you get an extra dashboard to go along with that. Now, I didn't mention the dashboards, but that's essentially how you're getting the movement points. Sort of like with the other racing games, you're allowed to go up or down 1 gear, and that gear is going to affect how many movement points you get, how far you can go, but also what the terrain effect is going to have in addition. Then you get the gold level for $80, so $30 more is going to get you 7 of these tiles, and then 8 of these tiles, as well as potentially 2 extra characters. And this gets you metal coins, I guess, as well, for an additional, what is that, $20? So you're really paying for the coins there, folks. You're really paying for the coins. Now, the interesting thing that they show you down here, if we actually go to the pledge levels here, they flat out say the bronze is the retail. It's going to get you stretch goals though as well. Then they talk about, again, the little extras there and little extras there. So it's good that they say that the retail version is going to have the stretch goals, because that's going to be the make it or break it right now. Because the thing I do not see on these stretch goals as we go through them here is, necessarily the exclusivity. And that's going to be the big question, right? Because if some of this stuff is exclusive and some of this stuff is pledge locked behind different pledges, that's where it's going to be. Green Flame, I saw an RPG campaign that's actually running for the Legacy of the Green Flame, if you're familiar. Green Flame, Penny Arcade, Acquisitions Incorporated. Anyway, if you're not, it's okay. And this is just what you're seeing. And so finally, when we get a little bit further down the stretch goals, that's when you're seeing an extra character for this level at the higher amount. So how many of those are there going to be? That's going to be the question. That's going to be the make it or break it, because again, it doesn't say exclusive, but probably you're going to pay extra for it. And so with the last Brotherwise games behind me, with Castles by the Sea, I mean, it's not that some of that stuff was that exclusive or that hard to get, but it just came a lot later. I'm not even sure if you can get some of the expansion stuff even now. So I can't say anything about a quote like this that adds mechanics that you think you've been missing, because it seems relatively the same, just kind of done in different ways, and it's easier to utilize some of the spells and the abilities than, say, some of the other games in the first place. But it very much gives me, in a sense, Dodo's Riding Dinos vibe with the setup, with the gameplay going around in the routes. But then, yeah, it is doing a few things different in terms of the pips, the total number of movement points, so it's a little bit of a smash up of some of those games in the first place. I mean, all in all, Brotherwise Games puts out a good product. It's just whether or not, again, you want to get this on crowdfunding, because the stretch goals might be the make it or break it at this point. And right now, it might be a pass if it's only like 1 extra character, and that's out of like 7 or 8 characters total. So yeah, I mean, it's like Mario Kart DLC. I want the racetracks to give me a completely different experience than the racetracks, but the individual characters in the DLC in the first place are, not different at all. So that's going to be the question. Now, these obviously have asymmetric abilities, so your mileage is going to vary. But there you go, Dungeon Kart. Now, what are we talking about? DVG Warfighter Vietnam. It's got $34,000. That's all I got to say. Wargaming, go check it out. Then the other one here, H.Y.S.T, How You Steal Things, a board game. I saw this one being advertised elsewhere, and I just wanted to cover it, even though it's not funded. It's about 50% funded at the time of me filming this. And essentially what you're doing is, this is a very heavy take that manipulation style game, as you are thieves going through this ever-changing, manipulating dungeon environment, i.e., a museum, trying to get the diamond, and you're trying to sneak out at the end, be the first person to reach the exit with the diamond to end the game and be the master thief. But you're going to be able to manipulate the tiles, rotate them, twist them, have some take that, turn the lasers on of the security grid, turn them off, sort of alert the guards, again, not as you may normally think of, but you can alert them on your fellow opponents. And so you can start to see how you can change things here with this GIF, and it gives you the routes that you're trying to get to in the end, trying to get to one of these corners where the entrances and the exits are in the first place to win. And you're just kind of rolling and then playing cards from your hand and choosing to manipulate however you can based on what you're given in the first place. So that's the game in a nutshell. Now, what's really cool is they have a great video here. They have some great animation here, but the artwork on this is a little bit just plain. And so that's okay. And I think that's turning off a lot of people. They've got a few stretch goals as well here of extras that are going to go in it if they hit these. And it's just, you know, it reminds me more of the Japanese games. I've got a couple Japanese games that are like this, that are just very simple and straightforward, but the nuance and the gameplay elements are there. So I wanted to give them a shout out because I think it is something kind of cool, and it reminds me of a very light Burgle Brothers, if you will, at the same time. So there you go. Next up, we have Goats. It's kind of a twist on a tiling. Carcassonne meets Race to the Raft, if you will. 2 to 4 players competitively, as you're going to be laying down these land tiles with a grid-based system, and you're going to be trying to maneuver your goats with your Move Goat card, trying to get them all back home before your opponents. But you have Goat-tastrophe cards that are going to be changing the dynamics or even the terrain or even the orientation of these cards in the first place as you go through the game. The problem that you really need to know, though, is there's not a whole lot of information. There's no rule book on how this actually plays. You've got a couple animations here. You've got a couple TikTok videos, and unfortunately, that's about it. Now, again, it has, you know, $7,000, almost 200% funded at this point, so that's really pretty good, frankly speaking, with the lack of information on this page. And because the animations give you a little bit of how you're going to be maneuvering this here and potentially changing there depending on those catastrophe cards that I mentioned. You're going to be getting money in order to potentially get special powers that will allow you to use them and manipulate things even further. And then you just win by getting them all home. And they give you a little sample setup here of how you're going to be looking at the end of the game. But unfortunately, that's about it. They give you some of the reward levels down here, and it's basically just the base game, a playmat, and some extra land tiles that you can punch out as additional levels if you want to pay more for. Unfortunately, that's about it. A few little snippets here, and you're going to have to otherwise kind of watch one of those snippets because, again, like, what's the nuance? How do you manipulate these? How many times can you play these cards? What, you know, just some of those basic details are just not on the page. So, I mean, it's kind of cool. People like goats, but, you know, is it enough to make me get it right now with the information that's on here, or, you know, really endorse it heavily? I mean, no, I think you need more information, and, you know, they're doing great for what it is, but it would be nice to have a little bit more clear, concise information on what it actually entails and what makes it different and why you should get over other things. So I'd like to see a little bit of that, but you know what? There you go. We have goats. There you go. That's the roundup this week. Everything all in a nutshell. I wasn't kidding last weekend. You know, again, I'm going to take some flack about hype video, right? You heard me with this video. You heard me with the 2 videos I put out this past week of the 2 games, Exceed and Peacemakers, that I was the most excited for those. So, you know, yeah, I hype things up sometimes, but I'm going to back it up as well. So take it for what it is, right? That's all I got. In case there's a little humming in the background of this portion of the video, that's because we had a tornado warning tonight and we lost power. So we have the generator running because that's right, we own a generator because we lose power multiple times a year. They actually cleared out like a whole section of trees next to the power line on the street across from us, like perpendicular, a whole line. And they did that like a month ago. Guess what? Didn't work. Yeah, also lost the internet too. Awesome night. It's an awesome night. So generator kicking in. Thankfully, at the time of me filming this, none of the kids have woken up yet though either. None of them, despite the biggest cracks of thunder and the siren going off and all of that. So take that for what you will. But that's all I got going on. And that's actually what the thing is, you know, color-wise over there, in case you can see that going on too. So there you go. Stay classy. Have a great freaking weekend. I'm working. See you around.